So good to see you. So good to be here. And so good to hear Ari in person. It's been far too many weeks. I've been all over the country doing all kinds of things with all kinds of churches and all kinds of students who are learning to be ministers and practitioners, and then ministers who are deepening their studies and going into doctorate programs. It's just been an amazing adventure. I've missed you, but I think the world is a marvelous place where all the work that you are doing through consciousness is making a difference in that way. Today is the second Sunday of Advent. So I'm going to go over there. I'll take it for a moment so you can hear me. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Advent is and why we do this. It's becoming more and more known around the world, the importance of this time originally between what we call All Saints' Day and what we call Christmas. It was Samhain and Yule. It was a time of preparation. The Samhain, All Saints' Day, October 31, is the ending of the harvest time. And then we prepare as the winter comes in. Things get dark and dark. We prepare because we know the light is coming. We know it's coming at the solstice. I love these decorated matchbooks that they use. Last Sunday, we lit the candle for hope because we know and we hope that a new light is coming. This week, the second Sunday, we light the candle of peace because in our knowing, we can experience peace of mind. And that is realizing, manifesting, bringing forth in our worldly experience the light that is in us. Yes? Advent. Most of us had nothing to do with Advent growing up, right? How many of you actually did Advent celebration? We got a few recovering Catholics. Most of the Protestant traditions do not embrace Advent because the Puritans under Cromwell declared that Advent was pagan and had nothing to do with biblical tradition. And so when the Puritans moved into New England and established what became the Protestant Churches of America in various ways, they didn't do it. But all those second sons who moved into southern states, Virginia, Georgia, the Carolinas, they were Anglican. They were the followers of the high church tradition that kept the Catholic tradition back. So as the two began to merge, Advent began to become available to the rest of America. Catholics and Anglicans, Episcopalians who are American Anglicans, and some high church Lutherans, all honor Advent. Now, in a Protestant church, probably won't usually be these colors, the purple and the rose. It may be a deep purpley blue, a royal blue, and gold, but always at the center is the Christ, the candle that will be lit on Christmas Day. When I was married, my husband was Catholic, and we would go to Mass on a regular basis because he was actually. And they have this thing, this wreath that they lower during Advent, and they light the candle, and then they raise the wreath. Wow! In most of the churches, and those candles were huge. I know they can make all that happen. So when we had children, I was convinced that there was no way my kids were going to think Christmas was a single blowout day of all kinds of presents and food and goodies and treats and disappointments and anger and frustrations and happiness and joy and music and story all in one day. I wasn't going to do that to them. I'd already experienced with my grandmother a little bit of the Anglican Episcopal tradition. She was Methodist when she grew up in the States. And so we already had 12 days of Christmas. And those of you that were with me who are here got to hear me do that. But she didn't honor Advent. It wasn't until his Catholic father, my children, was our center of our lives that we started acknowledging this period that prepares us for the coming. Advente means coming to. We're coming to something. What are we coming to? Well, in the history of the Roman Church, we learn that the man that we know as Saint Augustine was one of the bishops in that first set of councils that the Emperor Constantine had. And they were deciding and defining what Catholicism or what Christianity would be in the Roman Empire. And one of the things that he absolutely insisted was that this empire was not going to impose things on its provinces and all the different faith traditions, that they were going to adopt and adapt. Reeds, trees, bright shining things are all adopted and adapted from the cultures that were occupying the area we now call Europe. They were part of this tradition between Solomon and Europe of preparing for the deep winter and preparing as the sun is seeming to go away for its return. Now, the ancient people who had been practicing these traditions for thousands of years before the Roman Empire knew that the sun was the source of much important life-giving faculty, right? It's the light and the warmth. And as they watched the trees begin to appear in the sky, the birds and go, they knew that it was important to realize the truth that even though the sun seemed to be going away farther and farther south, and in the far north, it literally disappearing for days, that it must return. But they knew that their consciousness, their thinking, their feelings needed to be in alignment with its return, or in alignment with the birth of a new sun, the son of the sun, a new day star, a new light of all lights. And so they did what anthropologists call imitation magic. They made a lot of lights in their home. They created a lot of spheres and circles. They baked cookies and breads and things in those shapes. They cut orange slices and apple slices as round shapes to remind them that yes, that round, orange, weird gold thing that we sometimes see in the sky up here will return. And they filled their homes with light and life. They took out the old straw and leaves and plants from before the harvest, and they brought in the greens, the fresh living things, the holly, the ivy, the evergreen branches. This is a living tree. Thank you. Thank you. Bringing that in is part of this time of realizing that although the world out there may seem dreary and dark and dying, nothing can appear to be in all aspects of life, not just the natural. That's not what's happening. What's happening is the reemergence, the rebirth, the return of the light that is clearly symbolized and manifest as the sun. So this time of Advent for the folks before Christianity was preparing for solstice and beyond, and the wonderful Roman Christians adopted and adapted. So solstice, sol means sun, and stis is from stitere, a Latin word for standing. It's hard to tell in Oregon because it's usually quite gray. But I do live on the coast, and I do get to watch the sunrise and the sunset on the ocean as it goes further and further south, and then sits there for 3 days. And then after that, every day it's a minute further north and a minute more per day, all the way until it gets to the other end on June 1st, 22nd. And it sits there for 3 days, and then every day it's another. And that's a lovely thing to get to witness because it brings home this realization of the cycle and the process and the reality of the return. So for the people in the Roman Empire, sol stitere, the sun stands from approximately the 21st of December to approximately, the 25th of December, when it returns with all that light, and we have a new day start, a new sun of the sun, a new brilliant, light-giving presence. And the Romans adopt that as the birth. Well, that's why this kid that was born in March celebrates his birthday. So up in there, Advent is our time for not only physically, materially, but also for in our souls, in our lives, in our hearts, preparing for this marvelous. Now, in Unity, when we talk about the birth of the Christ, we're not talking about some kid maybe. We're talking about our own Christ, our own Christ awareness in our hearts, in our beings, in our words, in our actions, in our thoughts. And it happens that that totally fits with how the Celts can currently now practice Advent. Some of you may recall a marvelous hymn called Be Thou My Vision, O Lord of my life. Not be all else to me, save that thou my best thought, thy day and by night. Waking and sleeping, thy presence, my. That's an Irish hymn. It is reminding us there isn't someone out there. It's all in our being, in our lives, in our words and actions. And when we sing this song, O come, Emmanuel, I have a marvelous version I found on YouTube where these 5 kids are sitting on a bench in Jerusalem, seated with brick into the wall behind them. There are lights everywhere, and they're singing O come, Emmanuel in English, in Arabic, in Hebrew. Oh, it's so good. I strongly recommend it here to YouTube. And when we see this song sung in Arabic, wow, thou giver of the law be with us here. In Hebrew, thou son of David, be our governor. Be our governor now. Thou light of life, be fully mine. This is what happens. Now, over time, that period between the 1st of November and the 25th of December seemed to be constantly preparing And so somewhere around 1000, it got shortened to 6 weeks instead of 8. And then it got shortened to 4 weeks by Gregory VII in 1000, which didn't get across the world until about 1200 and was adopted by the Anglican Protestants in England in the 1600s. So 4 weeks of Advent, 4 Sundays. But in the mid-1900s, remember that period around the 1950s, 60s, 70s? A few of you might actually remember those years. Commercialism began to be a thing, and creating Advent calendars for a variable time period was not commercially acceptable. So Advent became December 1 to 24, very much. So if you have an Advent calendar, it will be from December 1 to 24. But if you're in a church, it'll be the 4 Sundays prior to Christmas. So there's a little bit of offering there. And my daughter remained Catholic, and her children are being raised Catholic, and they have Advent calendars all over the house. And they're always having to adjust because the Sundays of Advent are different from the Sunday or the dates on the calendar. So all the different Advent calendars are on different days. It's kind of cute to see. And those calendars are there to remind us of all kinds of things. As we go through this time period, the Roman Church established kind of a traditional pattern. The beginning of the pattern is those words in the Messiah. Unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and he shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Almighty God. Yes. All those words. When my kids were growing up, we started Advent on the first Sunday. And if there was a sing-along Messiah, we went, because I love to sing. And that was part of it. That first week, we're focusing on Isaiah's prophecy. And then in Unity, we're focusing on the hope of the promises. And our job as people who are practicing the principles of unity is to spend that week being aware of hope, regardless of the appearances. You all know I encourage media fasts on a regular basis. This is a good time for one, except for the homework. No. So true. But you do have to kind of downplay the drama. They have to do a little drama in this. So we focus on the hope. Something incredible is happening. We don't know exactly what it is. And it will be a presence in our lives with us always. And now we come into the second week. And in the Unity tradition, as you saw in your bulletin covers, it is the week where we focus on peace. But this is the trick. Because we are new thought practitioners, we are unity people, we're unitics, we get to experience the power of our faith. Because faith is bringing into visibility all things hopeful. And knowing deep down they must be so. So this week, we focus on what Emma Hopkins called the faith that is the gallant ship plowing through stormy seas of emotions. The world out there wants us to be in stormy emotion seas because then we don't pay much attention and we don't do the things that they want, that we think are good. Our faith is that world is being replaced. The darkness of the appearances of this time of year and this time in human history are not real. The darkness is not real. The appearances are not real. Our faith is in the presence, the one power, only one power, not other people having. Emily Kate has taught us that. Someone's powerful personality is just personality, but the individuality of us, the nature of us, the God divine presence in us is the only. Our individuality holds that means, regardless of the personalities that seem to be. And what happens is those personalities dissolve in the presence of the individuality. And often, very quickly, their individuality becomes their as well as we hold our faith in our knowing that the divine center of us is the earth. And can you see how peace is the result of that? If I knew God is the only power, love is the only thing that can be happening here, then all the other stuff can't happen. If I accept the truth of my being, that divine presence is in me, working in me, through me, as me, for me, and for all beings, always, in all ways, in all situations, how can I experience anything but peace? And mind and joy, which are the in the end. So this is a marvelous time. 4 weeks where we get to contemplate the reality, the truth of life, knowing that whenever anything appears in the cycle of being, it's a sign goes up and down. Whenever it appears to be troughing, we know the emergence is right here, right now. And it can happen very quickly. Literally, you can have it happen overnight. You can have it happen in an instant. Emma Hopkins reminds us that throughout the New Testament, when Jesus would do something for someone, it would be, and immediately the man saw, and immediately he picked up his mat, and immediately his skin was gone. It's the consciousness that knows that brings forth. So, if you want to know what your faith has been, help around you. If you want to know what your faith can be, sit down and write down the most hopeful things you can do for yourself, for everyone around you, for this world. Spend time in it. Feel it. Feel those hopes manifest in your life. This is why we fill our homes and churches with all this light and glory, hope, filling our worlds with beauty and joy. This is why the Christmas music is so beloved, filling our minds with these words and these ideas. This is why we gather in friends, and maybe if we're in a culture that does lots of posadas, one with our neighbors, and we celebrate the beauty, the joy, and the gratitude we feel, and we share. We share. It's not just about going out and spending money with gifts, no. It's about paying attention and allowing that which is most ready to be experienced become yours. I did a lecture on that yesterday on the affiliated New Thought Network. It was on. And one of the listeners grew up in rural Quebec, which is where, by the way, Peg is. Up there in the far north of Quebec. And he said, at this time of year during Advent, people would gather, they would from home to home, and they would all bring every extra thing they had, all of it. They planned out how they were going to make it through the winter, and they have food. Maybe an extra candle or two, a few extra potatoes, squash, or maybe someone had gotten one last deer in the last month of the season or something. They would bring their extras, and people would share. Now, everyone was getting together for these times, and what this man said was that if someone hadn't brought anything to share, everyone knew who was ready to receive more. And so they would make sure that that little extra. Isn't that sweet? That's the essence of potluck, isn't it? We bring what we have to share, and we share it in a meal, and it doesn't matter if someone's there with us, because they get to share it with us, and we get to share it with them. So Advent is a good time to remember that. And often in the Catholic and the Roman Church tradition, the fast that is encouraged is the fast that is described in one of the New Testament stories where Jesus says, the fast that I encourage is given to the poor, sharing your clothing and your food with those who need it. So I really love that a group that Ananda that would never call themselves Christians, but honor the teachings of Christ, are sharing with our food bank the extras that they have to share. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. And I know that most of you contribute to our food bank in some way, and I love that because I've been here and I've watched as many as 100 different households in a week receive because we have something to offer. Isn't that marvelous? Yes. And it isn't just for that, but Advent is one of those times we focus. We focus on sharing. Now, I used to read Little Women. Remember Little Women? Museums. And there's this marvelous set of chapters around preparing for Christmas and how each of them are trying to figure out what the other persons in their family are needing or ready to receive and experience. Right? And one of them was a piece of fabric to wipe a pen on. It was a pen wipe. And they put a little bit of decoration, and that was what they did. And it was a beloved. So that's how simple our gift can be when we pay attention to what people are doing. Yes. And what are we ready for? We're ready for a world that is everything we could ever hope for. And I invite you to use this week to know the truth. One presence, bringing forth heaven on earth as soon as we accept.